1968. Industrial societies throughout the world are in ferment following 2 decades of growth and prosperity. As in the early 19th century, unrest begins in urban centers of culture. Berkeley, New York, Tokyo, Rome, Milan, Berlin, Prague. The ferment originates among the marginal, among those considered to be wards and dependents of society. France, the mother country of revolution, seems immune. The regime of Charles de Gaulle is completing its 10th year in power. 10 years of economic expansion, of political stability, of dramatic decolonization, of increasing international prestige. The visible opposition in France is divided, institutionalized, and easily manageable. De Gaulle is at the pinnacle of his power. But, as in 1848, a new source of discontent appears outside the old social structure. De Gaulle wants more than stagnant stabilization. Anxious to modernize France, he sharply expands university facilities without altering its authoritarian structure. To relieve pressure on the Sorbonne, a new American-style campus is thrown up at Nanterre, just outside Paris, amidst some of the worst slums in France. Here are concentrated students in the human and social sciences, drawn primarily from the upper-middle-class areas of Western Paris. While the government televises long programs on student unrest in Berlin and New York to contrast external disorder with internal tranquility, the students are making other comparisons. Their middle-class backgrounds with the dreariness of their campus and the misery crowding up around it. The vociferous explosion of youth elsewhere with the rigorous paternalism of their own system. They compare their sense of maturity and numbers with their powerlessness in a Napoleonic university hierarchy, their study of man and society with the prospective futility of being unable to affect their social environment. A majority begin to desire a radical change in the university. A minority begin to agitate for a radical change in society. The two goals are finally fused by a common foe, the authoritarian Gaullist regime. By late April, a few student agitators at Nanterre are successfully combining the revolutionary example of international protest with mundane local sources of discontent to build a mass following. On May 2nd, the rector of Nanterre decides to end the disorder by closing the campus. The next day, students move to the Sorbonne to recruit support for their demands that Nanterre be reopened. The police are called in, arrest some students, and occupy the Sorbonne for the first time in its history. Angry students spontaneously take to the streets. The evening of May 3rd sees the first direct clashes with the police. The protest now begins to orchestrate its acts with symbols and tactics distilled from French revolutionary tradition. On May 9th, the militant left rallies in its traditional meeting hall, La Mutualité. Its keynote speaker is Alain Crevin, who will become an official presidential candidate in 1969 to gain free exposure for revolutionary propaganda on national television. Paris has again become the center for European revolt. Radical students from France are joined by representatives of Italy, Germany, Belgium, and Spain to solidify the movement and sustain its momentum. Speaker follows speaker denouncing capitalism, imperialism, bourgeois nationalism, and bourgeois culture.
Dieses freien Landes nur betreten, von der Sicherheitspolizei ins nächste ausfliegende, nicht von oppositionellen Parteirentnern, sondern von einer
Anti-fascist slogans burst enthusiastically from those for whom even the Algerian nightmare is a faded childhood memory.
La violence n'est nullement un privilège de celle-ci. Elle n'est en fait que la forme courante qu'adopte la dictature des classes bourgeoises, et plus précisément celle de l'oligarchie monopoliste, lorsqu'un mouvement populaire vient remettre en cause son pouvoir. La structure autoritaire de l'université est contre la bourgeoisie. Vive le socialisme!
La presse pouvait présenter les événements d'Allemagne comme le fait d'un mouvement étudiant excentrique, isolé en Europe, et auquel les mouvements étudiants de France et d'Italie ne pouvaient apporter tout au plus qu'un mouvement de solidarité. Nous avons...
Il y a encore un refus violent et total de la société capitaliste développée et de sa civilisation et de toute la merde qui représente pour l'homme moderne, de tout ça qui représente sur le plan de l'aliénation, de la fausse conscience, etc. La politique de ce mouvement a été caractérisée comme aujourd'hui en tant que farouchement anticapitaliste, anti-impérialiste.
The final speaker is Dany Cohn-Bendit, the organizational genius of the revolt at Nanterre.
Je ne discute pas ou avec des maoïstes, ou avec des trotskistes, ou avec un tel, ou avec des anarchistes. S'ils veulent faire partie...
He sounds the tactical theme for the months to come. Trotskyists, Maoists, anarchists, situationists unite against the authorities for the sake of the movement. On May 10th, the authorities are served with the traditional entree of Parisian revolutionary cuisine, cobblestones and barricades. Public opinion is strongly sympathetic to the students. The government is hesitant and uneasy. The police wait long hours before receiving orders to clear the streets. The lack of clear direction lowers morale and, along with grievances of their own, makes police reliability more questionable. Stones are the weapons of the students. Gas grenades, clubs, and fire hoses, those of the police. To those who think in military terms, the barricades seem impossibly anachronistic. After the May events, André Malraux, Minister of Culture, will declare such barricades outmoded in an era of tanks. Engels already found them outmoded by 19th century weaponry, as had Napoleon at the end of the 18th century. But barricades are a weapon of civil strife, a sign of crumbling authority. They are effective only as long as the state cannot or will not employ full military force. On-the-scene radio coverage of the night's events unintentionally coordinates student action. This is the first indication of the new role to be played by the mass media in the month-long drama. Neither side escalates its weaponry, but even without lethal instruments, the toll sends a shockwave through France. Almost 400 wounded, over 400 arrested, mostly the children of respectable Parisian parents. Even without tanks, the government is accused of unleashing unrestrained police violence. May 13, 1968, the 10th anniversary of de Gaulle's return to power. Hundreds of thousands of workers join the students in an act of public defiance. Not since the Popular Front of 1936 has France seen such street demonstrations. Nowhere in the world have workers responded so massively to student initiative. The demonstration expresses contempt or indifference toward the Gaullist regime, contempt for its paternalism, contempt for its agents, indifference to its cherished icons, indifference even to the symbols of the nation created by the revolutionary and Napoleonic eras. It is a confrontation with the whole authoritarian heritage, yet an oblique, almost playful confrontation. It does not antagonize the public and keeps the authorities off balance. The ritual of revolution played with gusto, without desperation, without despair. The cadenced chanting of slogans echoes in the streets.
Down with the bourgeois university.
University of the people.
All power to the workers.
De Gaulle resign.
French police, Nazi SS.
Stop fascism here.
The government's epithets are turned into proud claims. They chant, "We are hoodlums," as they will later identify with the expelled Cohn-Bendit, "We are all German Jews." Like many of the words, many of the symbols of past revolutions appear. The red flag of socialism, the black flag of anarchism, the clenched fist raised high, the hymn of the proletariat, the International. But the new context, the new actors, subtly alter their meaning. The old disinherited join the new, and for a brief moment, the 19th and 20th centuries seem to overlap. At the Sorbonne, the collapse of traditional authority is total. The police are withdrawn from the Latin Quarter, and the students take charge both of the university and of the surrounding streets. regular academic functions cease. The professorial nobility commits corporate suicide. University gets its revolutionary government, its student soviet, founded on continuous discussion. Students reject expertise, hierarchy, academic and political neutrality. The lecture halls and courtyards are filled with endless discussion. Seriousness is combined with freedom from tension. People want to talk, to listen, to express themselves, to exchange views. Everything is put into question. The role of the student in the university, the role of the university in society are re-examined as action committees spring up in every institution of higher education. Traditional institutions appear to collapse of their own weight into popular democracies. The students appear to be launching a new civilization.
Pour une organisation révolutionnaire de la jeunesse. Demandez la parole de Dieu contre le marxisme.
From the university, the confrontation spreads outward to other areas of French society. This is still a movement of the intelligentsia. The cultural and professional centers are the first to be affected. Typical is the seizure of the Odeon Theater in the Latin Quarter, denounced as a bastion of bourgeois culture.
Pour l'investissement de l'Odéon, je vous demande de lever le bras, mais dans le silence, s'il vous plaît, dans le silence.
The sequence of student action is repeated. The ritual war council of consensus and reinforcement, the march to the Latin Quarter before the cameras, the occupation of the buildings, the happy, self-contented confusion of the mass meeting.
Jean-Marc police. Les bourgeois surtout. Les bourgeois de France. Plusieurs points. D'abord, si on demande encore une fois de ne pas fumer, c'est parce qu'il y va de votre vie. Vous comprenez bien? Bon, c'est clair. Vous pourrez plus gueuler quand vous serez dans un incendie. Oui, mais sur...
No one knows quite what to do, but everyone has a suggestion. The mood is one of exhilaration rather than determination, of self-indulgence rather than self-defense. No Robespierre or Trotsky, not even a Cohn-Bendit rises to galvanize the assembly to revolutionary fervor or determined action. Jean-Louis Barrault, the sympathetic director of the theater, can describe the process as a happening. And Julian Beck can call it real living theater, the most beautiful drama he has ever seen. Discussion centers around the ideals of participation and self-expression. An increased share in decision-making and guarantees for expression become both the means and ends of the revolution. The occupation of the Odeon is the first step beyond the university, but others are to follow. The national organizations of authors, filmmakers, musicians, of lawyers and doctors, all condemned as bastions of privilege, defenders of seniority, and fossilized bureaucratic structures. The discontent will reach even the nerve centers of modern society, the press, radio, and TV. By mid-May, it is clear that the Gaullist regime can be successfully defied. The workers joined the students in the streets on May 13. Now, to the dismay of union leadership, wildcat occupations of factories, businesses, even government offices spread throughout France. A modern industrial state grinds unbelievably to a halt. Not a token one-day strike as in the past, but an open-ended paralysis. Again, the political demands of a minority of workers, usually younger ones, and the more broadly held economic demands of unions provide the stated goals for the strike. Demands for worker control and the 40-hour week, for participation and higher wages appear side by side. The union leadership spends the second half of May racing just to stay abreast of its membership. By May 22nd, without central coordination, there are 10 million workers on strike. De Gaulle's acute sense of political timing seems to abandon him. His call on May 24th for a plebiscite, as in 1958 and 1961, for a choice between himself and chaos, is greeted with derision and dismay. The initiative passes to the parliamentary and labor leadership.
Dans une bataille où ils ne sont pas sûrs de vaincre. Par contre, ce qui est nécessaire, c'est quelle que soit l'évolution de la lutte, nous devons reprendre seulement le combat à partir du moment où tous nous aurons obtenu les cahiers revendicatifs, et c'est sur un mot d'ordre général, central, dans le désordre, mais au contraire l'exigence que le comité central de grève nationale donne un mot d'ordre de reprise ensemble, comme le mouvement s'est déroulé ensemble. Dans ces perspectives,
Premier Pompidou hopes to take a leaf from the Popular Front government of the previous generation. He seeks to divide the workers from the students by repeating the pacification strategy of Leon Blum in 1936. On May 27th, the workers are accorded large economic gains. The union leadership is satisfied. But the rank and file reject the offer and hoot down the leaders. Now de Gaulle's strongman strategy has failed. Pompidou's economic strategy has failed. The social confrontation has now become a full-scale political crisis.
Dans les transports.
Eh bien, la paralysie est presque totale. Dépôt par dépôt, le mouvement de grève s'est étendu à l'ensemble du territoire pour la SNCF.
The syndicalist myth of the general strike suddenly becomes a reality. The transportation system ceases to function. Roads and streets become choked with cars out of gas. The sidewalks become choked with garbage. Fears of money and food shortages begin to haunt the urban housewife. The government media, hitherto underplaying the crisis, is forced to reveal its full severity.
Et sont occupés, celui de Charlesbourg-la-Garenne qui dessert 13 lignes et celui d'Ivry et de Limoges sont occupés. À Limoges, également occupée l'usine du Teil circule. Dans le nord sont occupés la fonderie Stein à Roubaix. Les ressorts du nord à Loué, la grande paroisse à Vaziers et Ternit à une rame sur 20. Grève sans occupation à la franco-belge de Rennes et aux ateliers du nord à Blanc-Misseron. Débrayage également ce matin à Vallourec-en-Zin. À Chauny, le personnel de l'usine Thomson occupe l'usine. Il a enfermé le directeur.
If the symbols are echoes from former revolutions, the style of expression is new, and the content of the expression is imaginative. Every wall becomes a writing surface, covered with slogans, questions, statements, humor. Posters created by the art students bedeck the streets of Paris. It is the one industry that will flourish during the next few weeks. In the last week of May comes a crescendo of marches, rallies, and barricades. On May 22nd, hundreds of thousands again take to the streets. Half holiday, half revolution, the dissatisfied citizens refuse to recognize the legitimacy of representative authority. The demonstrators reject traditional political processes as a farce, chanting, "Voting is whoring, election is prostitution." The Chamber of Deputies is dubbed the Chamber of Sellouts. On May 24th, the long-awaited address of de Gaulle to the nation is the signal for the most widespread and violent confrontation of the month. Streets are ripped up and trees are felled. As in February 1848, the barricades are built slowly, conscientiously, and professionally. The construction proceeds without apparent fear of sudden interruption. The public looks on with the detachment of spectators seeing preparations for a contest whose outcome is of no great concern. Student groups roam further afield and more destructively, stretching and scattering the forces of order. The stock exchange on the right bank is damaged by fire. A police station in the Latin Quarter is burned. On May 27th, defying a governmental ban on all demonstrations and bypassing communist leadership, over 35,000 workers and students gather at the Charléty Stadium outside Paris. For the first time, the participants seem convinced that revolution is actually possible. Openly insurrectional slogans are shouted as France wonders if the government will simply disintegrate through its inability to restore normal living and working conditions. May 29th. The demonstrators marching relaxed and expectant through the working-class districts of Paris obviously taste victory. De Gaulle is rumored to have withdrawn to his country estate as he did in 1947 when he abruptly quit the government. In reality, he is in Baden-Baden to check on the loyalty of the French army and to lay contingency plans for the military occupation of Paris. But Paris in 1968 is to be spared a repetition of the June days of 1848. The ritual of confrontation is to be answered by the ritual of counter-confrontation. On May 30th, de Gaulle again addresses the nation, this time by radio. No longer can the tired face of an old man be seen, only a voice, calling to France as it did on June 18th, 1940. De Gaulle is no longer the strong man calling for a plebiscite, but the Democrat calling for elections. Carefully planned, spontaneous demonstrations fill the streets of Paris with flags and venerators of the national glories of France. In the battle of symbols, de Gaulle is holding trump. He challenges the revolutionaries to defy the voice of universal suffrage. Overnight, the situation changes. On June 1st, a final anti-Gaullist rally is held at Montparnasse on the left bank. But the demonstration now only represents the ghost of a revolutionary threat.
Ils ont d'autres perspectives, peut-être dans l'immédiat. Ils pensent qu'il ne suffit pas d'un mouvement, mais qu'il faudra construire à terme un parti capable de mener la lutte jusqu'au bout. Ils ont donc encore à s'exprimer en tant que...
The traditional parties, frightened by the new left, accept the traditional electoral game. The union leadership reasserts its control. The government begins cleaning up the streets and the destruction to remove physical memories of the month-long confrontation. Point by point, the police reoccupy the sites seized by the students and workers. Yet there is no apocalyptic ending. The tide of defiance ebbed as it had arisen in successive waves. There were no mass arrests, no sudden dispersion of desperate men. The movement was to disappear with the erosion of defiance as it had appeared with the erosion of authority. The universities continue to experience turmoil but find no echo beyond their walls. The French return to work and begin preparing for their summer vacations. The incipient revolution collapsed, or was it an exercise in political education, as the student leaders insisted, or merely psychodrama? In retrospect, the parameters of the confrontation are clear, but its effects are less obvious. The explosion was of words and symbols, not dynamite and gunshots. What destruction occurred was of property, not life. The original aim was to transform social relations, not to replace the government elite. actions and symbols call to mind the French revolutionary tradition. But the role of the communications media, the age and origins of the main actors, the university as the vanguard, the importance of words and self-expression, the emphasis on open-ended process rather than fixed models, mark it distinctly as an event of 1968. In the elections of June 1968, the Gaullist Party won the greatest victory ever won by a single party in French history. Less than a year later, in April 1969, de Gaulle's constitutional referendum was defeated. De Gaulle resigned, and Pompidou was elected second president of the Fifth Republic. Another cycle of confrontation ended by strengthening the conservative reflex, while it subtly changed some patterns, some attitudes and institutions through the shock treatment of crisis. The confrontation of May 1968 has become a living part of French social memory. It has revealed new areas of fragility in modern industrial society. But at the same time, it has made evident the difficulty of rapidly transforming the social values upon which social relations depend.